The more success I attain, the greater the pressure becomes. Because
Mm,
every day I know right behind me are 300 people that are younger than me, all busting their ass to replace me. Every one of them would sell their mothers to replace me. So I have to stay in front of that. I have to always aggressively be pushing forward of that, and it never stops. And it's really bad in the world of magic
mm.
because
Welcome, badass entrepreneurs. It's time to hear the world's movers, shakers, and difference makers spill their secrets for unlimited success. So strap in, for Badass Entrepreneurs Only begins now. I am so freaking thrilled to introduce Franz Harary. Calling Franz a magician is like calling Michael Jordan a guy who occasionally likes to dribble a basketball. CNN refers to Franz as a mega magician, a grand illusionist. And indeed, Franz has single handedly redefined the audience experience of a magic show. As a visionary illusion designer, Franz has created spectacles that not only defy logic, but challenge our sense of reality. In every show, Franz seems to bend the laws of science. His work has won him multiple international awards for astounding achievements in magic,
it is a delight to be here.
right? I want to get the Franz Harary version of success. So I want to roll back time a little bit to around 1980. And because I think what you did there was a great example of how you create opportunities for success. Talk about how you convinced the university's marching band leader to let you appear as part of their halftime show. Like, what brought that idea and
That
how did you do it? Yeah.
in high school, I was with the marching band and the orchestra and the theater guild and all that. But I was also doing magic. I was inventing. I saw a magician, a Canadian illusionist named Doug Henning, and I
Yeah.
wanted to be him, but I had no idea how to be him or how to do any of that. So I just started making up things. And the more that I experimented with, I had a lot of failures, but every once in a while I got lucky. The whole time I'm playing my trumpet and singing and dancing and doing all that. And I thought, here is the marching band. And every weekend there's this giant audience and it's right there. Maybe I can figure out some magic that I could do for this audience. So I came up with this way to make a person disappear from the 50-yard line of a football game surrounded with fans.
Yeah.
And in retrospect, it was a new method. It was a new way to create an effect live. I didn't know at the time. I thought I was just solving a problem. So I went to the band director and said, look, I got this idea. And for whatever reason, he said, sure, maybe it was my boyish charm at the time. So I did that. And from there, it's, oh, okay, this works. And then I continued to, then I did it with the University of Michigan Marching Band and
Okay.
eventually took it to the Rose Bowl in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And it's a thing that I still use. It's a method. And by method, it's not even a secret. It's hard to explain in magic, but the methodology is
Yeah.
the use of psychology and engineering and understanding of Newtonian physics as well as life rhythm. So you're putting all these elements together that begets you the method. I would argue it's mostly psychology
Thank you.
because it's
Yeah.
convincing others that they need something that you offer.
Which is exactly what you did with the marching band leaders. And in designing illusions, are you playing on the psychology of what people expect and then breaking that expectation?
Psychology is at play on multiple levels of my career and my work. At its root, it is how magic works. It's
Mm,
understanding how people think. And then once you get that to some degree, you can control what they think. And that then becomes their reality. And there's a whole, I mean, it's kind of a Pandora's box you're opening up here. So
good.
psychology is at the core root of what makes magic, because
Mhm.
magic is our senses perceiving reality incorrectly and trying its best to explain that. So that is how magic is created. But whatever success I've had is using psychology to convince people that are way more powerful than me that little old me has something that they need. So
Right. And
that's a
so,
whole new set of psychologies separate from the psychologies of magic. I looked around and it's like, who do I have near me? What groups have an audience? And how can I exploit that audience? How can I tap into that? And still, even that right now in my life, I'm looking for new opportunities, new markets, new places. Right now, my thing is creating these spaces, these submersive experiential places where I can take an audience into and they can experience magic around them and see magic in front of them, but also feel it and hear it and smell it. And
and
so that's the next evolution of that. So I'm going to be 60 next month. So I don't know that I'm really the guy to talk to about TikTok.
yeah, but you've had
TikTok
mega
is
success on it.
it is the future. So I thought that just for the hell of it, I'm going to experiment. So I took a bunch of my old magic videos and I cut them down to about 30 seconds and converted them to a vertical format and then just put them up there. So
Hmm.
I've got my social media guy sticking one up every single day. And they're doing okay. I'm doing anywhere from 1,000 to 5,000, 6,000 views, which is okay. But yesterday, one of them started to explode.
Mm.
And last night, it hit 1,000,000. This today, let me check. I'll tell you right now where we're
Yeah,
at.
please.
At this moment, we are at 1.8 million. So here's me and my middle-agedness discovering TikTok, and I've got this one that blew up to 1.8 million. I don't know why. I'm not a 14-year-old girl. I can't tell you how the algorithm works, but I'm interested in it. So when I get
Yeah.
off this here, I'm going to call up my buddy and we're going to try to figure out why is this happening and how
See,
can we
see,
ride this, you know?
Franz, you were doing what I ask every entrepreneur to do, which is take a step back from your product and ask yourself, where's my audience and how do I reach them? And forget mega magic, you're a mega entrepreneur because you are constantly looking at where is the audience and how do I get in front of them?
You know,
Which leads me to the next big thing. So you get it in your head like, wow, if I could get a video to Michael Jackson's people, maybe I could do some illusions for his shows.
right. Well, Jackson announced his tour and I'm guessing you and I are similar in age. I was
We are.
massive idol, a massive, he was my idol, a massive fan.
We all
So
are.
so when he announced, it's like, "Oh my gosh, I wanna be a part of this. I can do this. I know I can do this." I took my VHS video of me making a car appear, which is another method I came up with when I was, like, 16. My buddy had,
Wow.
a small sports car, and I got a camcorder from somewhere, and so I just started experimenting in a parking lot. So I sent that video along with making, this person disappear from the 50-yard line. I gave it to my manager. It's a big word. But my agent who is getting me birthday parties and bar mitzvahs and church basements. And
Oh,
I
nice.
said, send this to Michael Jackson's people. And so every couple days I call, did you send it? Yeah, how'd it go? Did you hear anything? Nope. Anything net? Nope. This goes on for a month. Finally, he goes, look, man, I didn't even send the video. You're
Oh,
not going to be working for Michael Jackson. Just forget about it. I
wow.
was just crazy livid. I couldn't believe it. About then, Michael Jackson burnt himself in the Pepsi commercial.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
they happened to say on Entertainment Tonight the name of his attorney. So I wrote it down, found the guy, called him and said, my name is Franz Harary. I'm a 21-year-old magician from Ann Arbor, and I do magic for halftime shows, and I can do magic for Michael's tour and hire me. And he goes, I'm not your guy. So he goes, I'm
Well
not your
played.
guy, but I'll try this guy. And he gives me a number. And I call another guy, and it's the wrong guy. And he gives me a number. And I make my way through the record company and the promoters and the blah, blah, blah until finally I get to the right person. And by that time, I've talked to 5 or 6 people and I've got it down. So now I call and I say, my name is Franz Harary. I am an illusion designer from Ann Arbor, Michigan. I create illusions at a massive scale for stadium audiences. I landed that gig. I never finished college. I was going to school at Eastern Michigan
Yeah.
University as a music student, never finished. Ended up flying out to meet Michael. We became friends. I did that tour. And then with that friendship, with that relationship, I did everybody else for the last 36 years.
First of all, when your manager, the guy in the business, said to
Mhm.
you, look, you're never going to get in front of Michael Jackson, A lot of people have gone, well, this guy knows what he's talking about. He's got to be right,
No.
but for you, it set you on fire. And just as a cultural reference for the kids that don't know, and this is right around the time that he released Thriller, right? You
He just
first,
released Thriller.
right,
He was the second most famous person to Jesus.
right. And
It's
I mean,
like Jesus, Michael Jackson, Ronald McDonald. Those were the three most recognizable icons in the world.
you probably would have had an easier time getting an audience with the Pope, but you
Yeah,
said, I'm going to get in front of
right.
Michael Jackson.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
any time in my life, someone has told me, "Nope, that's impossible. You can't do this," or "No, no, it's not gonna happen." My instant response is, "I'm talking to the wrong guy."
Wow. So that's an amazing story. And the other cool thing is every time you spoke to someone else, you improved your pitch
Right,
as
right.
opposed to, oh, I have my elevator pitch down. I'm just going to do that.
That still happens. That's an ongoing thing because even right now, I probably have a 5% success ratio. So I gotta pitch 20 things until I
Hmm.
get something. So by the time you've pitched something 20 times, you get it down. Now, every once in a while, you get lucky and you don't have to go out there selling it 20
Right.
times, but it's still a process. I'm
So,
not a place in my career where I can just make a call to Steven Spielberg and say, "Hey, I got an
yeah,
idea. I'll meet you at Denny's," you know?
the 5% is a really important number. And I'll tell you why. I teach sales, right? And what I tell people is if you have a closing rate of over 30%, there's two things that you're doing wrong. You've priced your product way too low and you're not valuing yourself. Okay. So the fact that you have a 5% success rate means that you are well priced and you're reaching a little bit beyond what might be normally or easily possible. Like you're willing to go through the no. And that's fantastic. Now you spin that work into designing illusions for, I'm going to have to take a big breath. NSYNC, Cher, Snoop Dogg, Tupac, Styx, Dr. Dre, Usher, Boys to Men. I mean, how'd you do that?
Firstly, I started with Jackson, and then
Yeah.
from there, I realized very early on that the music industry is always ahead of the game because that's where the money is. So they've got the ones to apply technology to the entertainment industry before anybody else. Two places, the music industry and corporate shows. But corporate shows are getting smaller and cheaper as things change.
Mm.
Music is where it's at. So in the 80s, there's this big boom in music videos. But what's happening is pop stars are unable to compete with those videos because what they can do on television, this is even before digital, but what they can do in a two-dimensional medium is different than when you get into a stereoscopic world. You can't compete with yourself. So by using illusions, I realized that I could go to them and say, "Hey, look, I can help your live concert be on the same level as the videos that you're producing." So I'm working with artists that are very visual. Those are the people I can go to and say, "Hey, I got an idea." And after doing that for a few years, I got in that family. So I did Run DMC's Raising Hell tour, which, by the way, I'm seeing kids wearing the Raising Hell logo and it's vintage now. And I'm thinking, vintage? I designed that tour. Am I
Oh, God.
vintage? But from Run DMC, I got Dr. Dre, and then I got Snoop and Tupac, and it just one goes to the other. And it's always them coming up. I remember LL Cool J comes, "Hey, you know that thing that you did for Dre? I want to do something like that, but better." So they're all coming to
Mhm.
me to up each other. That went on for decades. After a while, I really stopped pursuing it and they just came to me. And that's really where we are right now. I'm not pursuing
Mm.
it anymore. And as I matured, my interests switched over. It took many different phases. It was about like 1988. I became pretty close friends with Michael Jackson and did a lot of stuff for him. I designed his Neverland Ranch's rig filled with magic. It's got the ability to appear and disappear and float in the air. So whoever bought that thing, I'm sure is still discovering trapdoors. But in 88, we were hanging out and he goes, "So Franz, you're designing all this stuff for me, but don't you miss doing it yourself? Don't you?" And I really did. So I took everything that I'd learned from him and from the music industry, how to produce lighting, sound, staging. This is before LED. And I use those philosophies to put
Mm.
together an illusion show that looks like a pop concert.
Wow.
That sort of got me some traction as a performer. So I've got these parallel careers as a performer and as a designer. So to speed forward, I eventually made the transition into not just illusion design, but effects design. And then from that into architectural design, because I can now use illusion principles within architecture. And that led to scenic design and theme parks. So I've done
Cool.
a crazy
Yeah.
amount of work for the themed entertainment industry, which is where I'm at right now. I'm looking for gigs, as we all do for the rest of our
Uh-huh.
lives, to produce more themed attractions. I'm looking for a space in some area that's already got some tourism where I can produce the next incarnation of a thing I had in Macau called My House of Magic, which is with this
Mhm.
experiential thing. And that pretty much sums up my work today,
Wow.
what I'm doing in the world of themed entertainment. And as I say, that's what I get up now every morning pursuing.
That's so cool.
Yeah, right. And there's what I call the three silent killers of success, right? Sleep, stress, and productivity. Now, badass entrepreneurs never get enough sleep. We all have way too much stress, and that puts our productivity in the crapper. I found something that beats the silent killers. It's a technology that lives on your phone. Now, I know this sounds crazy, but it's sound waves that put your brain into states of relaxation and focus. Now, when I first heard about this, I just thought it was bullshit, right? But then I heard that this company, they're called Nucalm, Nucalm. Nucalm is being used by the Army, by U.S. Special Forces, the FBI, professional football teams, pilots, surgeons are using Nucalm instead of anesthesia. And what's his name? Tony Robbins just jumped on board with Nucalm, right? So I thought, at the very least, I got to try this. So I downloaded the app, I put it on my phone, and it just sounds like music. But oh my God, after one session, I was on fire. 20 minutes of Nucalm was like 2 cups of coffee. And then on the other side, I use Nucalm at night, and it puts me out like a light. I wake up in the morning, shot out of a cannon. Now, if you want a free week of Nucalm, it's super simple. Just text the word CALM, C-A-L-M, to this number, 213-409-8366. 213-409-8366, and text the word CALM, C-A-L-M. Get more sleep, feel less stress, and blow your productivity out of the water. Just text CALM, C-A-L-M, to this number, 213-409-8366, and get a free week of Nucalm. Free. Okay, so sorry for going off like this. I'm just super fired up about it. Let's get back into this.
I want to take a step back a bit and talk about how you design your product for your audience. Because
Right.
at the end of the day, Franz, you're really no different than a business coach or like me or someone who owns a bicycle shop. You have a product that you want people to buy. And in order to get them to buy your product, you have to design it for the customer experience. Now, what you think is great about your product might not be what your customer wants to buy. So how do you design it with them in mind? This is really important because most people don't do this. They design it with themselves in mind.
That's an interesting question. You always need to start with your buyer. You need to see your product through your buyer's eyes. It's not about what do I think is cool and what do I want to do. It's about figuring out how to position what I want to do in such a way that makes a potential buyer believe that
Mm,
they need this to further their own goals. Often, this is, at least in my case, it's a production manager or production designer, or even the assistant to some CEO who has been given the task to fill a need, to
mm.
find a guy who can blah, blah, blah. And if I come along and say, I can help you, this is what I can do, this is what you need, they now think to themselves, whew, I found the guy and he's a safe bet because clearly he knows what he's doing. I hire this guy and it's going to save my job. Usually that's the level that we're dealing with. Now, every once in a while you get lucky and you deal with the top guy. If that's the case, the pitch is different because the top guy is now the visionary
Mm.
and he or she knows that it is his mission to find the next thing, to figure out what is going to push his enterprise or her enterprise forward. So that's a different pitch. But in the end, you're still pitching that you have something that they need to become more successful. They don't
And,
care about you. All they care is how can you help me? And that needs to be your pitch.
and what's really cool about that pitch, Franz, is that you are positioning yourself as the other side of that thing that you said earlier. If someone says it can't be done, I'm talking to the wrong guy. You are
Right.
the right guy because you're saying, no matter what you want, I can do this.
In that train of thought, I can also say anything that I've ever done that was worth anything, I was slightly out of my league. I was never
Hmm.
sure if I could actually do it. I thought I could do it. So, but I was like, there was like 10, 20%. Is this going to work? Is it not going to work? But you just take a chance. And even today, I'm now gambling millions of dollars. But I know that somehow I can always get it to work. And because I'm always shooting beyond my game,
Mm.
I undersell. So I'll sell what I'm proposing, I'll sell it about 70% and then shoot for 100. So when I
Wow.
make it, it's like, hey, look, you got more than you wanted. On the other hand, if I fail, if it doesn't work out, I'm still giving them the 70% that day.
It's a classic sense of under promise and over deliver. It's age old, but you are using the tried and true principles of entrepreneurialism. I don't think you realize, Franz, what a mega entrepreneur. Like you're doing all the things that successful people do. It's like I said earlier, jumping out of the plane and saying, I really hope that this parachute is going to work. Right.
Right.
But
Right.
with the certainty that it'll, even if it doesn't, I got this other chute, or I'll be able.
Or if it doesn't, I know how to bounce, you know.
So, well, one last thing, because all this is this very exciting rise, but I do want to ask one last question about the darker side of fame and fortune and everything that goes with it. A lot of people think that once you make it, that's it. Life is on autopilot, but that's never true. So let's talk about what you've had to
You know,
endure as
I
a successful.
and I actually want people to think that because that kind of furthers the illusion, at least for me, speaking for
Yes.
myself.
Yeah.
The more success I attain, the greater the pressure becomes. I guess
Mm.
every day I know right behind me are 300 people that are younger than me, all busting their ass to replace me. Every one of them would sell their mothers to replace me. So I have to stay in front of that. I have to always aggressively be pushing forward of that, and it never stops. And it's really bad in the world of magic
Mm.
because so much of magic is reliant on the method, again, the how to. And it might take me anywhere from a month to a year to figure out the how to of something. But once
Hmm.
I've figured out that methodology, once I've got it all worked out, the true beauty in the design is the simplification. And you get it down
Mm.
to nothing until finally you look at it and you go, ah, of course. What was I thinking? That's the only way to do this. Problem is, there's a lot of bottom feeders out there, a lot of weekend warrior magicians who are completely unethical. And these guys will see the illusion, see the effect, be relatively quickly easy to decipher the method. And once they got the method, they go, oh, that's easy. I can do that in an afternoon. But what they're stealing is they're not just stealing um, that
The illusion.
that IP. They're
Uh,
stealing, in some cases, a year of my work. And it's very difficult to protect these methods because they are so enigmatic. There are ways to protect them, and I've spent a ridiculous amount of money on legal fees, but it is a cat and mouse thing trying to protect it because it's so ongoing.
and you also
It's
had people steal money from you, right?
oh yeah. Yeah, that I think it's safe to say if you attain any kind of success, you're gonna have people steal money from you. It happens with embezzlement, it happens in corruption, and
Hmm.
you're always looking for it. But the problem is sometimes the people you hire to look for it are the people that are doing the embezzlement. So That's going on.
Oh,
That's not unique to magic. As soon as you start making money,
mhm.
people become firstly resentful and then opportunistic.
Wow.
So it's in every business.
That's
Yeah,
something that few people talk about in terms of attaining wealth. Like the people around you become jealous and
sure,
cruel.
sure.
And then other people of smaller mind just start stealing.
Sure, because you got money, so it's not going to get anyone in. But believe me, my parents were poor. I didn't realize I grew up poor until I was an adult. But everything I had, I made by myself. So there's no free lunch there. But somehow people, if you attain any sort of success, they feel like you had an advantage. And I think the only advantage I had was not knowing that I shouldn't be successful.
And also your courage, or I'll say it this way, your true courage, that
Very good.
willingness to step into the unknown.
Yeah, I think a lot of that was just, again, out of necessity because I didn't know what I didn't know. And the only way I was going to do what I wanted to do is just to try. There's no other options. Sometimes not knowing the scope of the mountain you're about to climb makes
Mm.
it easier to take that first step.
And when you do know the scope of the mountain and you're like, wow, this like with the orb, wow, there's a lot riding on this. How do you navigate that stress?
30 years earlier, figured out how to make an object float in the air using that method. And so I made lots of little models and toys, and I used to use it and give them away to my friends. So I knew that it would work this big. And I thought it would work 3.5 stories tall. I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure. But I thought. And if it didn't work, then I had an out there as well. So it's always baby steps.
I I will say this as we wrap up is that you have an internal willingness to do the things that most people won't do because you seem to hold your vision of success much higher than your concern about things not working out, about failure.
What's the point of even being here if you're not
Mm,
firstly doing what you love? Because when it's all done, what do you got to show for? For me, I think the most important thing is to create something that didn't exist before and then put it out there and watch it help people, watch it make
mm.
people feel good. That is such a massive reward. There's such a huge rush in that. That's what drives me. And to do that has meant I needed to just create new markets for myself and to spearhead a new industry. But it allows me to do that thing that I love, which is creating something that came from me, came from my imagination and didn't exist before. And I think that at least becomes my legacy. And I think that is also probably true for most entrepreneurs.
Certainly the top ones, the Elon Musk, the Steve Jobs, the people who bring great things to the world. And so, Franz, thank you for being so generous with your time.
It's been a
You know,
pleasure and power to you. I look forward to seeing what happens next.
Hey, one last thing. If you're feeling stuck in business life, wherever, download my book, Jumping the Gap, Kill Your Story and Take Action. In this book, you'll see how the stories that you tell yourself are stopping yourself from living your greatest life. Just text the word GAP, G-A-P, to this number, 213-409-8366. 213-409-8366, and text the word GAP. It's a short read, it's fun, it's easy, and if you hate reading like I do, you can grab the audiobook. It's at that same link. Just text the word GAP, G-A-P, to 213-409-8366. You'll love it. All right, that's it. Go out there and be badass today.